I'm not sure I'm a lover of the Jewish people. I'm a lover of Israel, for sure. Jewish people are difficult. Israelis are great. So, sorry if I disappointed anyone there. No, thank you all for coming. Thank you, John. Thank you, Josh. And thank you to Roger and Eric and to everyone else who made this possible. I'm still, my blood is still flowing from Yoram Hazony's talk. He really got me excited. And I have to say, I totally agreed with everything he said, and particularly with his optimism. And I want to try to talk in the same spirit and transmit an optimistic message about the situation that Israel is in. I think, and U.S. Israeli relations. Simply put, I believe that Israel is going to become one of the best, possibly even the best ally of the United States in the next 25 years. Precisely because the United States is so ambivalent about its role in the Middle East. Precisely the things that are making all of us nervous. You know, anyone who cares about Israel is looking at America, America's confusion about what to do in the Middle East, confused about whether it even wants to be in the Middle East. All the signs are there. And all of that is, on one level, it's troubling and it's challenging for Israel, absolutely. But on another level, it's really fantastic, I think. And there's a simple reason for that, and it's this. The United States is divided among itself. We're clearly very polarized. The polarization is deep for deep domestic reasons, but it has all kinds of foreign policy implications. There's no foreign policy question that doesn't become polarized because of our polarization. So we're confused about where we are, what we're doing in the world. We're not even sure we want to be in the Middle East. But what we learned from the Obama years is that we can't leave the Middle East completely. We still have interests there. So we're not, as much as we may want to say, to hell with all of them and just pack it up and leave, we can't. We're still going to be there in one way or another for some time. And that means if we're not, but at the same time, it's very clear we're not going to have large numbers of troops on the ground. We're done, I think, with any kind of massive effort to reshape the region with our own troops. Short of a national cataclysm, if there's another major, really very major attack on the United States coming from the Middle East, then maybe we'll mobilize again for some kind of major effort there. But I think basically, we've seen in the last 3 presidential elections, the candidates who have won, Obama and Trump, have promised the American people that we're not going to have big adventures in the Middle East. So we're not going to do it ourselves. We can't coerce these people in the Middle East to do what we want. And we can't entice them to do what we want. So we're going to have to accommodate ourselves to the region as it is, and we're going to have to work through proxies. And when you start looking at who could be a possible proxy for the United States in the region, Israel is right at the top of the list. It's at the top of the list because it's a well-functioning country, as Yoram was saying. It's a democratic country, so we have a rapport with it on that level. We have a history of working with it. It has an absolute first-rate military. It has an absolute first-rate intelligence service. It opposes the same people that we oppose, and on and on and on. And the fact that this region still matters to us, and we have to work through partners, and Israel is the top partner. This is going to mean that the U.S.-Israeli relationship is going to flower. And there is an historical example, I think, of what we're talking about, of what we're seeing before us in the Trump administration. And this is what happened in the Reagan administration. At the beginning of the Reagan administration, when the Israelis were in Lebanon, there was enormous tension between the Israelis and the Americans. And when the Americans were in Lebanon, and then you may recall Reagan, the Americans were in Lebanon, but they were very confused about what their role was there. And there was a huge fight between the State Department and the Defense Department. And in the end, Reagan said, to hell with it, and he picked up the troops and pulled them out. It was called, at the time, it was called the strategic redeployment. They strategically redeployed the American troops from Beirut to ships on the sea, and then they strategically redeployed to somewhere else. At the time, if you go back and you look at the press at the time, there was a lot of worry. There was a lot of worry in Israel that this was going to be bad for Israel because the United States was not working against the Soviet Union and the Assad regime, and also there were lots of tensions between Israel and the Reagan administration. But within relatively short order, all of that went away, and there was a flowering of cooperation between the United States and Israel on the strategic in the strategic plane. Precisely because, although the United States got up and left, the United States still opposed the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union was still the ally of the Assad regime. The Assad regime was still the enemy of the United States, and there was Israel blocking it. And in a way, the fact that the troops got out of Lebanon made it easier to cooperate with the United States rather than less, because there weren't all of these complex force protection thinking that was going on about how to take care of the American troops on the ground. So I look at this as a very similar situation right now. And so when Donald Trump looks at the region, he's looking for allies and proxies. Israel is obviously number one. I don't need to list to you all the reasons, all the ways that Trump has shown his good feeling about Israel. He has two other major allies that he's trying to work through. One is Saudi Arabia, and the other is Turkey. He's trying to patch up relations with Turkey. All of this makes absolute perfect sense to me. In a second, I'll talk. The last one, the Turkey, makes a lot of people nervous. There may even be people in here, like Yoram Hazony over there, who think that just maybe, who think that this Turkey business doesn't make sense. We can't turn the whole. John tells me I only have an hour and 15 minutes, so we can't turn the whole thing into Turkey. I'll say a few words about it. Maybe we can talk about that afterwards. But the conception makes perfect sense, especially when you realize what the alternative conception is. Because President Obama, when President Obama came into office, he, just like Donald Trump, wanted to pull back from the region. But Obama's conclusion about how to do that was to work with the Iranians and the Russians to create a kind of concert system in which the Iranians and Russians would become, if not partners, at least parties with whom we could have an accommodation. And so this is based on a theory that we actually share a lot of interests with the Russians and the Iranians. We shared an interest in stabilizing Iraq, supposedly. We shared an interest in fighting radical Islam, supposedly. And so on and so forth. And there was a belief, it exists among Republicans and Democrats, but it's particularly prevalent among Democrats these days, that the hostility of the Iranians is a consequence of our hostility to them. And if we just reach out our hand in friendship and show that we don't want to topple them, then we're going to get a kinder, gentler Iran to deal with. I think the Trump administration does not believe this. It believes that it's the job of the United States to contain Iran, and it's looking around the region for partners who are going to help it with this. Now, this all makes perfect sense, and this is why I think Trump has put the maximum pressure campaign on Iran. But that means primarily using sanctions because he doesn't want to use troops. There are two, I think, problems with the Trump conception, or sort of weak points in it. It makes sense. It's much better than the alternative, the Obama alternative, which I hasten to add, the Obama alternative is not dead. It's out there in Democratic circles. The former Obama team is still pushing it. And the way they are pushing it in the press and elsewhere is by denigrating the natural partners of the United States in an anti-Iran coalition. That means denigrating Netanyahu. That means denigrating Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia, and it means denigrating the Turks as partners for the United States. Now, there are. I don't need to go over to go over with this audience the unsavory aspects of Mohammed bin Salman and the unsavory aspects of Erdogan, but a coalition against Iran is not a beauty contest. And there are no beautiful leaders in the Middle East other than the Israelis. They just don't exist. So we have to deal with what's there. And we can't get too hung up on all of the imperfections of any possible partner, because everyone is going to be very imperfect. So we have to have a much more sort of hard-headed and clear-eyed view of what's going on in the region and who we can possibly work with to achieve our primary interest, which is undermining Iran. Everything else is secondary, including the fight against radical Islam. As nasty as ISIS is, and they're very nasty guys, but they were 20,000 nasty guys with pickup trucks. The United States, pickup trucks and machine guns. The United States is a superpower. 20,000 nasty guys with pickup trucks and machine guns is not a major strategic threat. They are, in the strategic sense, ankle biters. The Iranians are on the verge of having a nuclear weapon. They're proliferating militias all around the region. They are distributing to those militias precision-guided weapons. Think about the Iranian attack on the Abqaiq refinery. That was a very sophisticated attack carried out with Iranian weaponry built in Iran. And this is cruise missiles combined with drones. Now, Iran has, through Hezbollah, 100,000 rockets and missiles in Lebanon that it's turning into precision-guided weaponry. If it were to carry out a similar attack, say on Israel's nuclear reactor, it's going to penetrate Iron Dome. It's going to penetrate it, and it's going to do severe damage. That is a strategic threat. That's a much bigger threat than 20,000 ankle biters in, nasty guys in the Syrian desert. So let's get our priorities straight. The priority is undermining Iran. Now, only 1 hour left. Wow. John's very scared I'm going to go overtime, so I'm just. See, look, you did. I lost my train of thought. This points to, though, a weakness in the Trump doctrine as we've seen it. And I just kind of laid it out. One weakness is the lack of a ground game against Iran. So the sanctions are great. The sanctions are great, and the sanctions are putting a lot of pain on Iran. Don't believe all the Muslims are no different than any other people. Right? If they don't have money, they can do. If they don't have money, it bothers them. Right? The Iranians have this incredible publicity that a lot of Americans believe that that they don't feel pain and that economics doesn't matter to them and so on. It's all nonsense, and you can see what's happening in Lebanon and Iraq right now. That a lot of that dissatisfaction with the status quo that is in Lebanon and Iraq that is backed up by Iranian power is a consequence of the financial question. I'm not going to say that the Trump sanctions produced this in Iraq and Lebanon. There's a lot of things that have nothing to do with Trump going on there, obviously. But the money matters. But the money can't do everything. And there's an imbalance if you look at this method, the Hezbollah model that the Iranians are proliferating around the region, combined with the precision weapons, it favors them on the offense. The cost of Iron Dome and David's Sling and systems like that is prohibitive compared to the cost of the Iranians of developing this offensive weapon. So there's an imbalance there. And defense, as I pointed out, defense can't solve the problem. You want to have good defenses, but if the Iranians threw everything they had at Israel, they're going to do a lot of damage. It's going to get through the defenses. So you also have to have deterrence. And deterrence requires taking action against the Iranians from time to time. And not just the Israelis. It means the Americans need to do that. I don't think that Trump necessarily had to react to the Abqaiq attack. We are a superpower. We can, David Ben-Gurion said famously, "Ha-pinchas patuach ve'ayad roshemet." You know, we're keeping tabs. We're gonna answer at a time and place of our choosing. And the United States can have a time and place of its choosing to respond to the Iranians, but it has to respond. And it has to be seen to be responding so that its allies understand that it's gonna back them up. Trump, I think, has shown a little bit of weakness on that score, and he is, I think, thinking about the election. A considerable part of his base doesn't, he promised them peace and prosperity, and he doesn't want to look like a warmonger. But I think he still has to worry about backing up those allies in the region. And the other difficult, how much time do I have left? 5 minutes? See, the other area is Turkey. This is the other difficult area. Like I said, we can't turn this into a discussion of Turkey. I wish we could. But let me just make a couple of points about Turkey. I've been making people angry lately by saying that the American pullout from northeast Syria was not a mistake. It was the beginning of a rectification of a mistake. And it is not bad for Israel that he's done this, and that Erdogan is not the enemy of Israel. I'll put it to you this way. One of the things that makes Turkey attractive as a partner of the United States is that it is a nation with a very clear sense of itself, a long history, a clear sense of itself, stability, and a clear understanding of its national security. This is true under it doesn't matter who's sitting in the presidential palace in Ankara. You could put a stuffed animal in the presidential palace in Ankara, and that stuffed animal would say, the #1 concern of the Turkish nation is the Kurdish question. Now, they will not, actually, they will say that behind closed doors. They will not say that publicly. But that is, this Kurdish question and the fight with the PKK is the top priority of anybody who's in the presidential palace. So all of this discussion about Erdogan and all of his sins and how ugly he is and his anti-Semitism and everything else, it can all be true, but it's irrelevant regarding this major issue. The major issue is the PKK for the Turks, and the United States allied with the PKK in northern Syria. And it didn't just align with them. It got the whole proxy relationship wrong. Because we wanted to do this, we wanted to destroy all of these 20,000 nasty guys with pickup trucks and machine guns with the smallest possible number of U.S. forces. The smallest possible number, 1,000, 2,000 guys. And it seemed amazing. We have this new model. We can go in to northern Syria and we can look at all the devastation we can wreak with only 2,000 guys. And it's cost-free. It's not cost-free because the security of our troops in northern Syria was guaranteed by the PKK. We had the SDF, right? We propagandized ourselves to say that this is not the PKK. It was the PKK. Our little bases, you've seen those pictures of our special forces bases in northern Syria. The perimeter of those bases was protected by the PKK. So you're a Turk, you look at that, there's the Americans surround in bastions with the PKK around it. This is, from an Israeli point of view, it's like looking at American bases in Jordan, and they've got Hamas all around them. We took this guy Mazloum. Mazloum is absolutely, the General Mazloum, the head of the SDF, is PKK. He is the adopted son of Abdullah Öcalan, the founder of the PKK. And he's got an assumed name. And we've got Trump now saying to Erdogan, oh, I will negotiate between you and General Mazloum, a wonderful guy. This is crazy. This is crazy. This is guaranteed to alienate the entire Turkish nation. Not just Erdogan, not just Erdogan supporters, not Islamists, the entire Turkish nation. So let's get that off the board. Let's stop doing that. Because if we alienate them, we push them into the arms of the Russians, we push them into the arms of the Iranians. The PKK, by the way, historically is the ally of the Iranians and the Russians. We borrowed an Iranian-Russian proxy to go kill ISIS, and never demanded that they stop their relations with the Russians and the Iranians. So when all of a sudden the PKK goes to back up under Assad, and the Russians and the Iranians, and everyone's saying, look what Trump did. Trump didn't do that. We did that to ourselves when we allied with a proxy of the Iranians and the Russians. It is crazy. It is crazy. Now, Turkey is going to be difficult. It is always going to be difficult. Erdogan is going to be difficult. Erdogan has this Islamist ideology that is difficult. But this is a nation. It is a real nation with real self-interest, and it has a sense of its priorities. And it is separated from Israel by this mess that is Syria. So there's a limit to the hostility that Erdogan is going to show. Even if he wakes up every morning and curses the Jews, he's got other priorities to take care of. So the Israelis shouldn't be putting themselves between the Kurds and the Turks. That's a problem that they don't need. You have enough enemies. You don't have to go make an enemy of the Turks. Even if they say nasty things about you, you can leave them off in their corner of the Middle East up there in the north. And I do believe, I cannot prove this. I'll stop here, John. I cannot prove this. Some of the hostility that Erdogan has been showing toward Israel, he's been giving vent to his anti-Semitic tendencies because we've been arming, training, equipping, and building up and expanding the geographic expanse of the PKK. My point is this: I can't say that his hostility is going to melt away as we move away from the PKK, but every problem we have with Turkey becomes more manageable when we're not arming, training, and equipping the PKK. Every problem that we have with Turkey becomes much worse when we're doing that. If we want to energize and anger all of the Turks and line them up behind Erdogan in whatever he wants to do against us, this is the best way to do it. You could not have come up with a better strategy for doing this. So, bottom line is, what we did in northern Syria was not cost-free. It was very harmful to U.S. national security. We're not out of the woods yet. Turkey is going to continue to be a challenge, but I don't think it should be occupying the minds of the Israelis too much. I think they should be focused on Iran, and they should be keeping America focused on Iran. Yoram talked about the Jews being a nation of priests who are going to help the nations understand what they're doing. Israel has a role to play in helping the United States figure out what it's doing in the region. I'm going to tell you one thing, and then I'll end here. I went to Israel in 2014, and I met with top Israeli people, and I told them, Obama is aligning with Iran. And they talked to me in this, the Israelis have this fantastic, this very endearing quality of talking to outsiders like they're idiots. And it's a charm. It's a charm that Israel. I personally love. The first time I went to Israel, the first day I got to Israel, I was a student. I got to Israel. First day I got there, I sat next in the student cafeteria next to this guy, and he whacked my water, threw it all over me, right? And he looked at me and said, "Why'd you put your glass there?" Right? So I fell in love with the country that minute, right? Now, They all talk to me. When I tell them Obama's aligning their... No, he's not. This is what one is right now. I've been in 5 meetings with President Obama. It's very important to listen to the words they use. I thought, you know what? I have sat in countless seminars, not with Obama, but with Obama clones, right? I know every thought that goes through that guy's head. You should listen to me. He's aligning with Iran. But they didn't hear it. You know what they told me at that time, 2014? Turkey is a very serious threat. You should get Turkey out of NATO. They were on an anti-Turkey thing at that point. They should have listened to me. Obama was aligning with Iran. Iran is the strategic threat. Iran is proliferating militias around and giving them precision-guided weapons. It's a very thorny problem, and it's difficult to solve, and that's where we need to be focused on. One thing I learned in government, the U.S. government is a big, dumb beast. It's a big, dumb beast, and it's not in control of its limbs, right? Now, what's awesome, there's several moments when I was in government, I saw the entire government decide what it wanted to do and how to do it. And when that big, dumb beast, when all of a sudden everything is in control and it comes after you, it's awesome. It's amazing, the power of the United States. We are a very powerful country. But most of the time, it's like this. And the people in Washington who do strategic, they always want to be clever. They always want to be clever. We should do like this, and if we do like that, and then the Iranian problem will melt away. No. You solve the Iranian problem by whacking Iranians. This is how you do it. You whack the Iranians, whack. And any concept that doesn't lead directly to whacking Iranians is a bad strategic concept. So forget everything else and just say, whack the Iranians, whack the Iranians. Whenever Netanyahu talks to Trump, you should say, whack the Iranians. Nothing else, that's it. And get the big dumb beast focused on what it should focus on. Thank you.